This right here is the Big Screen Beyond 2E. One of the best VR headsets you can get right now. And yes, this is it. It's got its audio strap, it's got the custom face gasket, but this little tiny thing is all you need to have one of the most immersive, most detailed, and honestly, one of the easiest PC VR headset setups that I've ever run. So let's talk about it. Hello and welcome. My name is Wolfie. You're watching GreaterThanPie, and today we are going to be looking at this. This is the Big Screen Beyond 2E, as I said in the intro. Now, this headset, spec for spec, actually completely blows away my previous PC VR headset, the Valve Index. And compared to the Vive Focus Vision, it's actually pretty comparable. In fact, they trade blows in a lot of areas. That being said, this thing has a micro OLED screen in it, and I mean, just look at how compact. One of the biggest things about this headset is just how small it is, because this thing weighs less than some gaming mice. In fact, the most recent Razer Boomslang and the original Boomslang are actually heavier than this VR headset without the strap. Also, I appreciate that it comes in cool colors. Like this one's the clear. I wanted the purple one, but for some reason when I was ordering it, the purple one wasn't available. I think they were just like out of that version or like oversold that version, and I would have had to wait even longer for it. So I think actually we should go back to when this was ordered. So I actually ordered this device in October. It is currently February. Now mine did come before February. I've been testing it for a little bit here. It actually came in January. It originally was going to come in December, but there was such an influx of orders after Valve announced the Steam frame that they fell behind on production. Like that is, they've actually been very communicative of the delays and when devices were going to be shipped out. And I just was on the cusp that unfortunately did go into the new year. But I mean, it was almost immediately afterward. And ordering this thing is actually pretty cool. So you actually have a choice between two models, the 2 and the 2E. The E stands for eye tracking. And the E does include an extra cost to it, but it has effectively one of the smallest, I think actually the smallest eye trackers built into any headset. In fact, they're really hard to see. Might not even be able to see them in the top-down camera, but they're like these little tiny things in the lenses. I'll try to get some good B-roll of them, but they are super, super small. And so depending on which one you get, either has or does not have eye tracking. The rest of the specs are exactly the same and have the exact same compatibilities. You do get a choice of a face cushion. When I ordered, there was not an option to get the universal face cushion, but now there is. That being said, one of the cool claims to fame is this custom face cushion. This was quite literally, I had to do a LiDAR scan of my face using an iPhone, and the instructions say it has to be an iPhone. And if you don't have an iPhone, you need to borrow a friend's iPhone, which I did not at the time, but now do have one. Digressing, I did have to actually borrow a friend's iPhone. You send in the scan, they send their confirmation back to you saying that they've got it, and then they do the rest with that. And then there's a couple other accessories, like the tactical, I don't know what they're really calling it, but essentially it's like a flip up thing for it, or the audio strap, which is what I got here. And when you partner the audio strap with the custom face cushion, you get an experience that's really interesting because this doesn't have anything top down holding it, but this holds to my face. A little bit of a spoiler for later when we talk about that. That being said, this configuration as it is right here came to $1,473 USD. And that is with shipping and handling costs along with tariffs. So yeah, it's really expensive, but what do you get for that price? Well, let's start with the headset itself. The first thing you're gonna notice about this headset is how small it is. And that is because instead of having the typical Fresnel stack, which is a little bit cheaper, it's using a dedicated pancake lens stack. And this has shown up in Meta's newer headsets and is probably going to show up, I think, in the Steam frame as well. One of the benefits is that they can be extremely, extremely thin. One of the downsides is that unfortunately, they also have a lot of light loss, which partnered with the OLED screen could result, hypothetically, in a dimmer image. The headset itself is only 107 grams without the audio strap. And the audio strap isn't that heavy, nor is the cable, but 107 grams puts it below some gaming mice. And actually, I know that like 90 grams is like the target for a lot of gaming mice, and it's only a couple, 10, 20-ish grams heavier than that. Compared to every other VR headset on the market, this thing is downright light. And realistically, this thing is a PC VR headset through and through. This is where all of that weight is saved. There's no battery. The processor on it's only for running displays. It doesn't have a standalone mode. And it doesn't have like fun features like easily adjustable IPD. The IPD is adjustable on the 2 and the 2E, but you need a tool, it's a screwdriver, to adjust it from in here. And the mechanism, again, has to be very small to accommodate this very small form factor. You can get prescription optics for this that actually magnetically attach into the lenses themselves. There's like this little ring. That is actually really cool and really useful, which means you can actually switch them as your prescription changes. And I do think this is a very similar system to what Meta and HTC also have going for their headsets. There really isn't a spacer option though for you to use your glasses with this headset. So you will incur an extra cost if you are a glasses user who requires glasses to see properly. One major benefit though from getting this thing custom ordered with a custom face gasket is that they did set my IPD for me and it was perfect out of the box. I put this headset on and I didn't have to fiddle with it at all. It was just there, good to go. And I haven't had to really tweak it all that much thanks to that. And thanks to its rigid IPD system, I won't accidentally mess it up and then forget exactly where I had it set so that I would have the absolute perfect clarity. So in many ways, it's a double-edged sword. And the screwdriver that you need to adjust it is included, which is nice. Now, I talked about the micro OLED screen a little bit, but the resolution on this thing is combined 2520 by 2560, which is, I think, about 2560 per eye, 2560 by 2560. I think it's a square shape. It might be rectangular. I'll throw it up on the screen here for you guys. And it has a refresh rate of 90 hertz. And these are dual micro OLEDs, so it's not a uniform panel like the Quest 3S and the Quest 2. This does actually have a power cost, but also a benefit. And the benefit of having the dual screens is that each eye should be seeing the full image as opposed to a partial image at any given time. This headset also has a effective FOV of 116 degrees, give or take, because everybody's a little bit different. Your eyes are all a little bit different. But from my personal experience, when putting this headset on, I was actually impressed by the FOV, because looking at something this small, you'd be thinking, yeah, it's probably got a narrow FOV. It does not. It actually has a pretty decent one. Granted, it's not the largest FOV I've had to deal with. I think that goes to the Vive Focus Vision, but the optical clarity from the pancake lenses and the micro OLEDs is so much better than that headset that there's more of a reason to move my eyes left and right and actually go to the edge of the frame, because the sweet spot's that much larger. In my testing, the pancake lenses have a massive sweet spot. Getting your headset on perfectly isn't hard with the custom face gasket and the audio strap, because it pretty much puts itself in the exact position it wants to be without any effort, which is really nice. But while I was doing the eye tracking calibration setup, I did notice that I could go much further on the screen itself before I started to see double vision, because the lenses were able to facilitate a lot more eye movement. It is head and shoulders above the Vive Focus Vision in clarity and sweet spot, which is pretty nice, even though it has a slower refresh rate. That being said, refresh rate isn't really the whole story here, because we're dealing with OLED versus LED. Now, LED is a reliable technology that has been around for a little while now, and we've gotten really good at making them really fast. But OLED has, in my personal experience, been a lot smoother. So there's this thing called a refresh cycle. Both of these screen types have them. That's where the refresh rate comes from. But OLED changes its pixels faster than LED. The LED screens I've tested always have a little tiny bit of ghosting, which looks a little bit like blur in a VR headset. Now, VR headsets do use incredibly fast and incredibly high quality screens, and that is one of the benefits of the market maturing. But the motion clarity, combined with the optics, combined with the resolution, have made this headset an absolute joy to wear and use. Everything is so clear. There was a point while I was playing VR chat where I have one of my favorite maps is Aquarius, I think is what it is called. And it is this giant fish tank hotel, essentially, where there's nothing but fish and jellyfish and sharks and all sorts of stuff swimming around. And it's really, really pretty. And there is a couple things, like it's a player home. It's nice, but there's a bathtub inside of it. And at one point I just sat down and looked out the pitch black window with the jellyfish in that bathtub, and the contrast, because OLED, by the way, can get perfect black where LED cannot. LED is always some sort of a gray because of the backlight, where OLED can turn that pixel off and actually make it black. I was just looking at this, it's very slow moving jellyfish out the window, the ripples of the water, and it felt unbelievably real. So while I have had headsets and do have headsets that have a faster refresh rate, I have to say OLED just seems to do it better. Now, one complaint that may be levied against it is, well, actually there's two: how hot the screen gets and how bright the screen gets. Now, there is an overdrive mode that I never had to use, and that's because this thing has an excellent light seal on it. Because it has an excellent light seal, I don't need to make it brighter to actually enjoy it. Now, there might be some people who do consider it too dark, and so you can take it up to 120% brightness, but that will increase the heat of the headset. And the heat of this headset is significant. When I got done with my 4-hour testing session, my face was sweaty. It made me take a shower afterward, is the best way to describe it. I felt gross. And there was a little bit of redness on the top of my nose. That was specifically because there was a bit of pressure, specifically right there. Now, it wasn't enough that it was uncomfortable. I played 4 hours without even really realizing it, but it was something that I took note of after the initial session. Now, I do think that a factor that leads to that comfort over long periods of time is the custom face gasket. Now, it does feel like this is a silicone material. Not entirely sure what it is. It is 3D printed, which is interesting. They were able to print in this flexible material. And it's held on with magnets. And as I said, they adjust your IPD for you, so everything's good to go. And this thing is a factor in how cool this headset is. When you get it, your head, it's so weird. You could put this on your face and it just kind of sits exactly where it's supposed to. No movement, no adjustment, nothing. And I would not use this headset without it. This is what makes this headset really specific to one person, right? It's set to me through and through. I can't throw somebody else into this VR headset because the only face it's made for is mine. And while I do think that this will increase the lead time for if you were to order it now or once they're completely caught up, it is kind of worth it in my opinion. And I do believe if you use the universal one, you need to specifically get the tactile strap for it to work because it doesn't have as good of a light seal. Speaking of straps, it does come with one out of the box. It's just a normal stretchy cloth strap, and it doesn't even have a top strap when you use that configuration. And I do think that with this custom face gasket, that would be pretty adequate to holding this device to your face since it really doesn't need that much mounting pressure. But that doesn't come with audio. You would have to bring your own audio and plug it into the output USB-C on the side of the headset. So what I personally recommend is the audio strap. And I gotta say, this thing, taking it out of the box, I had thoughts, and they weren't great thoughts. It does come in this really nice box, to be honest, which you guys saw in the intro of this video, but it's mostly plastic. There's a little bit of metal here and there. And then these ear cups, they remind me of a Media Center PC headphone, and I was worried that they were going to sound like it. Instead, I was pleasantly surprised that it was more like the Walkman headphones where they looked like crap, but they sounded pretty damn good. And these do sound pretty damn good. They are a bit bassier than I would want, and I would love some settings to kind of tune that a little bit. But overall, very usable, and I am not seeking a third-party strap, which, by the way, does exist for this headset. I was in VCAT, and I saw booths with headset straps for this headset, which, might say something about how much this headset has picked up specifically to VR chat. Digressing, this is the audio strap, and it's not too bad. It's comfortable enough. It holds your head pretty well. It's from the back end, and it doesn't need as much mounting pressure as other head straps I've used. In fact, the Bifocus Vision one needs a pretty strong seal to get that light seal perfect. But because of the custom face gasket and the head strap, it almost just needs to sit there and hold your face a little bit. It doesn't have a lot of movement side to side because the face cushion is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And even in fast-paced games like Beat Saber, Pistol Whip, and Synth Riders, I never once felt the headset move out of where it was supposed to be or move out of alignment. It also helps the eye tracking do its job. Now, the eye tracking is kind of weird on this headset. So I've done it on the Bifocus Vision, and in there I just had to look at a couple places, and then it just was like, okay, here's your eyes. And they were really unnaturally smooth, but they worked. The face tracking on the Bifocus Vision is its own interesting can of worms, especially compared to this, because it does it a little bit differently. So I had to train a custom model of my eyes into the headset by getting a token from Big Screen, training it, sending it out to a server then sends it back to the headset, and then it works from there. Getting it work software-wise was a bit tricky because I ended up having to use VRC face, or what is it? VRC face tracking, that's what it's called. Despite it having a built-in face tracker, just because that seemed to work and the other way did not. But once I got it there, the eyes do move in a natural, twitchy way. It's hard to explain. And I think it's actually even tracking dilation, which I was shocked because I didn't know that I programmed dilation into my avatar. Digressing, the eye tracking is really, really cool. And even if the dilation is just a side effect of something that's happening on here, it looks a lot more natural than the Bifocus Vision's more smoothed out version. The one thing it doesn't have is a full face tracker, sort of, because I have one coming. I don't know when it's gonna get here. I ordered it before I ordered the headset. Putting this headset together was actually super straightforward. So the main unit itself is this unibody right here. And then the face gasket is magnets. And then to attach the straps, there's literally these plastic clips. You just slide them in and click and you're good to go. Cable wise, this is a bit tricky and you do need to pay attention to this. The cable that comes with it is a fiber optic USB-C cable. This is important because this allows it to have higher signal integrity over longer distances. One of the things that has always been a problem with the VR headsets that have a removable cable is that signal integrity does degrade, and especially these higher refresh rate ones. One of the issues that the Bifocus Vision had is that not enough power was getting into the cable so it could carry the signal perfectly, and that was causing disconnects, and those disconnects were causing the early issues that we experienced on that headset. In order to correct this, Big Screen made a fiber optic cable. The problem with fiber optic cables is they are directional and do require some special hardware, which everything is provided to you by Big Screen for that. There's a breakout box that has USB display port and additional power. And then this cable. This cable is labeled blue side to headset, and then there's a red side that goes to the PC. You must keep this cable in that direction in order for it to work properly. If you have them flipped, this headset will not work. The headset does have a mic built into it somewhere, which is nice, but if you are running your own audio, be aware that you're gonna have to convert to USB-C. So you might need to use your iPhone dongle. So you're gonna need to dongle it up if you're trying to use certain cans, or get one that is USB-C powered. Or just, audio strap, which is why I did that, because it's easier. From a software side, I did have some weird issues, but they were more my issues than they were the headset's issues, because I had the previous headset hooked up. And there was a bit of a weird thing that happens with this headset. Because its drivers are tied to Steam VR, it is almost impossible to fully close out of Steam VR. And I'm sure there's a workaround. I'm looking into it to see if I can figure it out. But unfortunately, that requires a full restart every time I had to restart Steam VR, and that was a pain. But several restarts later, it's working, and it hasn't stopped working since. I plug it in, start Steam VR, put it on my head, and it's good to go. Now, fortunately, tracking-wise and performance-wise, this thing's amazing. So as I mentioned, looking through these screens, it's unparalleled clarity, but then the actual tracking of the headset is super fast, super accurate, and I never once felt like there was a disconnect between how I was moving my head and how the headset was reacting. There is a bit of added latency when using the Knuckles, and I think that's entirely because I have to go through Bluetooth. And while my current PC has Bluetooth receivers, there are no antennas attached to it, so I highly doubt that they are the best. So I might change some things up on my side in order to make that work, but I was able to get the controllers to work by repairing them. And I don't know if they're repairing through the headset. I know with the Index, they paired through the headset. It's not like super bad, but I did notice in Beat Saber, there were some times where the hits weren't quite there, which is funny because the audio latency is perfect and the visual latency is perfect. It's just like controller latency. And so I do think that's a fixable thing. I don't think that that's a big screen problem. I think that's more of a my PC problem. Like putting this headset on is such a trippy experience. You look at this thing and you're always a little bit skeptical. And then when the magic happens and you slide your face into this thing, it's like putting on a VR headset for the first time again. Like this tiny little thing has just as much of the depth of field effect as the more chunky, heavy headsets. It's almost surreal because what's on your face is so small that like it's comparable to like swimming goggles. You're putting swimming goggles on to dive into VR, and it's so cool. Like it is honestly one of the coolest things I've seen tech-wise in a very long time. So overall, it's amazing. The main drawback seems to be its price and really the slow output from big screen. And so it doesn't really have too many drawbacks. It's actually pretty amazing. And if you can afford it, I would recommend it. But if you're watching this video, you're very much aware that Valve is going to be releasing the Steam Frame soon. And with the release of the Steam Frame comes the discontinuation of both base stations and Knuckles controllers. And so while I would recommend this headset, I can't recommend this headset. You see, here's the problem, right? Unless you already have Knuckles controllers and you already have base stations, you will be purchasing them separately. You can't buy the controllers or the base stations from big screen. And Valve was the one making both of them. Now, fortunately, you can still buy base stations. Unfortunately, it's through HTC, and HTC is charging more per base station than Valve did. Valve charged around $150. I think HTC's charging around $250, $210. Depends on the tariff situation at the time. And so it costs more to get your base stations. You need at least 2 to get it working. I use 3 because the triangulation method is actually really good. Almost another $1,000 in just base stations. And then when you add in the controllers, which I think are another $250. You can still buy them through Valve. You just have to buy them one at a time. And there are no real third-party options except for maybe the Vive ones might work. Yeah, the Vive ones would work, but you lose some functionality. So if you want to buy actual Knuckles, those are like $250 a piece. So at that point, you're pretty much spending the same cost as the headset in just the things to run the headset. Not to mention a strong gaming computer to, actually make things work. And RAM is expensive now, and unfortunately, VRAM is super important for VR, which means that the cards that have the high VRAM, which are also the ones that are being eaten up by AI, are also the expensive ones. And so, yeah, there's a lot of factors into why it's very difficult to recommend this headset to most people. But if you are an Index user, this is a no-brainer because you already have everything else. And compared to the Steam Frame that's coming out, this will work with your existing hardware. This will be less invasive to your actual setup as opposed to the Steam Frame, which is going to be fair bits different because it's both standalone and tethered and uses a different tracking method, which makes your base stations obsolete and doesn't have Knuckles, but it does have its own controllers. We will be testing the Steam Frame when it finally comes out, and I am excited for it tentatively. But there are concerns that unfortunately I do have thanks to both this headset and other headsets I've had in the past. So yes, unfortunately, if you don't have the controllers and you don't have the base stations, you have to get both. You don't have very many options for controllers. There are things like VR gloves, which we are testing a pair of VR gloves. I actually had to wait for something from the company because the triggers were just slightly too uncomfortable, and they sent over some trigger extenders. And I'm kind of hoping that takes them into the territory that they could be a viable replacement for the Knuckles. They do require you to bring your own trackers, which is its own problem, but it could be really cool. Could be a viable replacement, but overall, like, there really just isn't a direct comparison to the Knuckles, and eventually the Knuckles will sell out and you will not be able to get them. So yeah, that's what really complicates this, because realistically, this is the best VR headset I've ever used. Like, hands down, amazing. It's got an amazing image. It's incredibly small. It's incredibly light, and it just works in how I would want a VR headset to work. It does everything I could possibly need it to. And I wish I could recommend it to more people. But unfortunately, due to factors like its price, the price of the accessories, and the fact that they are being discontinued, not the headsets, the accessories, I am going to find it very hard to recommend. Unless you're an index owner, then it's a no-brainer. But that's where I'm going to end this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, consider giving it a like, maybe comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Wolfie, out.